The worn teddy bear, missing an eye and a button nose, was clutched tightly in Lily's small hand. Her lower lip trembled as she looked up at Mark, her brow furrowed with a familiar sadness. "Is Daddy coming home soon?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Mark knelt, his knees protesting slightly on the threadbare rug. He smoothed down Lily's unruly brown hair, the same shade as her mother's. "Not yet, sweet pea, but we're having a great day, aren't we? We're going to build the biggest Lego castle ever." Beside Lily, Leo, a whirlwind of energy at 7, was already rummaging through the Lego bin. He was a spitting image of his mother too, with her bright, inquisitive eyes. He didn't ask about his father, not anymore. Mark had noticed that. Leo had a way of burying himself in his games, his laughter a little too loud sometimes, a little too forced. Mark's heart ached for them. He'd married Sarah 5 years ago, a whirlwind romance that had swept him off his feet. She'd come with a past, a complicated one involving a boyfriend who'd made some very poor choices. When Leo was born, Sarah had been separated from him, and a few months later, the boyfriend, their father, had been arrested for drug trafficking. Sarah had been terrified and alone, and Mark had stepped in. He'd loved Sarah, and he'd loved Leo. When Lily came along, their own little miracle, he'd felt a fierce protectiveness over both of them. Then Sarah had gotten sick, a swift, brutal illness that had stolen her from them too soon. The grief had been a gaping hole, and Mark had been left to navigate the world as a single father to 2 children who were not biologically his. He'd never wavered. They were his kids. He knew about the father, of course. Sarah had been upfront about it. He was in for a long stretch. Mark had seen a few blurry photos of the man, hard eyes, a sneer that seemed permanently etched onto his face. He'd heard snippets of stories from Sarah, hushed conversations about his recklessness, his volatile temper. Mark was determined that his children would never know that side of their heritage. He would be their anchor, their steady ground. "Let's get started, champ." Mark clapped his hands together, trying to inject an enthusiasm he didn't always feel. The weight of responsibility sometimes felt crushing. He worked long hours at the accounting firm, scrimping and saving to provide them with a good life. He'd turned down promotions that required more travel, opting for stability. He cooked, he cleaned, he read bedtime stories, he attended school plays and parent-teacher conferences. He was their everything. Leo's eyes lit up. "Can we build a dragon's lair?" "Absolutely, and a giant knight to protect it." Mark joined him on the floor, the Lego bricks cool and familiar under his fingers. He watched Lily, who had abandoned her teddy bear and was now meticulously sorting the red bricks. She was so quiet, so observant. He worried about her, about the unspoken things she carried. Later that afternoon, as the Lego castle grew to impressive heights, the phone rang. Mark's stomach tightened. It was usually the lawyer or the prison social worker, or sometimes, very rarely, Sarah's mother. He picked it up. "Hello?" "Mark, it's David." Mark's jaw clenched. David, Leo and Lily's biological father. He hadn't heard from him in over a year, not since his last parole hearing had been denied. "David, what do you want?" "Just checking in. How are the kids?" His voice was rough, unfamiliar. "They're good. They're happy." Mark kept his voice even, neutral. He didn't want David's negativity to seep into their lives, not even through a phone call. "Happy? That's good. You're a good guy, Mark. Sarah was lucky." There was a hint of something in his voice, a strange mix of grudging respect and bitterness. "I'm their father," Mark said, the words firm and unwavering. "That's what matters." There was a pause. "Yeah, well, listen, I might be getting out sooner than they thought. They're talking about some kind of rehabilitation program, early release." Mark's breath hitched. This was the news he dreaded. He'd prepared for it, in a way. He'd talked to Sarah's lawyer about custody, about ensuring his position as their legal guardian. But the reality of it, the possibility of this man re-entering their lives, was a cold dread that settled in his chest. That's interesting, David. So I was thinking, maybe I could see them, when I get out. Maybe take them for a visit, show them their old man. Mark's mind raced. He looked over at Leo, who was now engrossed in a fierce battle between a Lego knight and a plastic dinosaur. Lily was humming softly to herself, carefully arranging a row of blue bricks. They were so innocent. They deserved a stable, loving environment. They deserved him. David, they have a father, Mark said, his voice hardening. They have me. I've raised them. I've been there for every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every school play. I'm their father. But I'm their blood, Mark. You can't deny that. They deserve to know who their real father is. They know who their father is, Mark repeated, his voice a low growl. And he's not the man you are. I won't let you poison them, David. I won't let your choices influence them. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it. My children are not going to be part of that. He could hear David's ragged breath on the other end of the line. You can't keep me from them forever. The law will see that I'm the one who has provided for them, who has loved them, who has been their rock, Mark interrupted. You've been absent. You've been a criminal. You have no right to demand anything from them. You think you can just erase me? David's voice was laced with anger now. I'm not erasing you, David. I'm protecting my children, Mark said, his resolve hardening with every word. They don't need you. They have me, and I will do everything in my power to keep them safe from you. He heard a string of curses, a furious outburst that Mark refused to engage with. He simply waited, his hand gripping the phone so tightly his knuckles were white. Finally, David's voice returned, a low, menacing hiss. You haven't heard the last of this, Mark. You think you can control everything? You're wrong. Mark hung up the phone. He stood there for a moment, the silence of the apartment suddenly deafening. He looked at his children, their faces alight with the joy of their game, blissfully unaware of the storm that had just threatened to break. He walked over to them, his heart heavy but his purpose clear. He sat down, pulling Lily onto his lap and ruffling Leo's hair. What are we building next, guys? He asked, his voice a little shaky but filled with a fierce love. Leo grinned, holding up a particularly large Lego brick. A secret escape tunnel. Mark smiled, a genuine smile this time. Perfect. And who's going to be the brave knight guarding the tunnel? Lily piped up, her voice clear and bright. You are, Daddy. Mark's heart swelled. He squeezed Lily close. He looked at Leo, his eyes sparkling with determination. He was their daddy. He would always be their daddy, and no one, not David, not anyone, would ever take that away from them. He would build them a fortress of love and stability, a castle so strong that no outside influence, no bad seed, could ever penetrate its walls. He would be their safe harbour, their constant, their everything. He would make sure they never felt the absence of a father because he was right here, giving them all he had and all he was. And that, he knew, was more than enough.